morning. Welcome to today's podcast. As usual, this is Club 13, club where we discuss being better people. This is chapter 3, third episode. Today, we want to discuss something that I really like. So, I came up with a list of 13 things that I think are sinful. We have number 1, lack of emotional intelligence. Number 2, greed or consumerism. Number 3, jealousy. Number 4, blind faith. Number 5 is ignorance. Number 6 is inferiority complex. Number 7 is antisocial behavior. Number 8 is disorganization. Number 9, we have idleness. Number 10 is idealism. Number 11 is addiction. Number 12 is debt. Number 13 is poverty. All forms of poverty. We start with the first one. Let us discuss lack of emotional intelligence. So our friend Google says emotional intelligence is defined as the ability to understand and manage your own emotions, as well as recognize and influence the emotions of those around you. The first time I heard of emotional intelligence, I was doing some training for marketing, and the trainers were talking about emotional intelligence, and I got curious, and they were saying how as a marketer or as a salesperson, you have to be emotionally intelligent, meaning you have to understand your own emotions and keep them in check, as well as recognize and influence the emotions of those around you, meaning your client. They say that emotional intelligence takes you further than IQ. You might be a genius, but your genius serves no one if you lack emotional intelligence. If you're the most intelligent person in a room, you need to shut up because people will not like you. You will say things, you'll make statements that people will not like. So shut up and read the room and know what to say. If you get into a room and you realize you're the least intelligent person in that room, again, shut up. Don't say anything. Shut up and listen. You will learn something. And therefore, by the time you're leaving the room, or by the time you're speaking, you sound intelligent. That is emotional intelligence. The ability to get into a room and read people, recognize and see how to influence the emotions around you. They call it, there's IQ and then there's EQ. EQ is emotional intelligence. So they say when it comes to your happiness and success in life, your EQ matters as much as your IQ. Because remember, you cannot be successful without people. Personally, I always say your network is your net worth. Like the people around you will build you, your networks. And they will only do that if you have EQ, emotional intelligence. If you learn your emotions, understand your emotions, control your emotions. So it is a sin to lack emotional intelligence. If you can't understand, you can't manage your own emotions in a positive way, then you end up being stressed. You end up not being able to communicate effectively. You can't even empathize with others. And you can't overcome challenges. In a conflict situation, you cannot diffuse the conflict. You will be detrimental to yourself and the people around you. So if you want to succeed, you need people. Now, if you want to get people to do things or you want people to help you out, you need emotional intelligence. You need to keep your emotions in check, as well as recognize other people's emotions and find ways to influence them. That is how you influence people. Now, if you lack emotional intelligence, in my books, you are sinning. It is a sin. Remember, EQ helps you to grow, build stronger relationships at work, in school, and achieve your goals, personal goals, career goals. You need emotional intelligence to do that. So you have 4 attributes that define emotional intelligence. There is self-management. You have those feelings. Are you somebody who acts on feelings or you act on facts? You need to be able to control your feelings. Self-management involves controlling your feelings and behaviors, managing your emotions in healthy ways. You see, being happiness as an emotion, sadness as an emotion, they have a place. Being angry has a place as well. If you have the right self-management, it is an attribute of emotional intelligence. People who are gluttons, they can't control the feeling that they want to eat. Can't control it. Some people can't control buying stuff they don't need. They see it, they have money they want to buy. They lack emotional intelligence because they can't control their urges. Another attribute of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. Are you aware of your own emotions? What is your temperament? Are you aware of your temperament? What kind of person are you? Do you even know? There's this common saying, follow your heart but use your head. Follow your heart but use your head for direction. Don't ask your heart for directions. Heart, feelings, head, facts. Use your head. Put your feelings aside. This is especially for men. Ladies feel if you start going by your feelings as a man, you've lost your way. There's this debate of what a woman is. It's down to people going with their feelings and not going with facts. If you go by facts, you will go with biological facts. It's easy to know what a woman is and what a man is. But if you go with feelings, as a man, what are you doing in your feelings? Hence the phrase, enda sikia vibaya huko. Don't go with your feelings. So one attribute of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. Are you aware of do you recognize your emotions, and are you aware of how they affect your thoughts and behavior? Do you know your strengths and weaknesses? Remember was it episode 1 where we talked about doing a SWOT analysis on yourself? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to your opportunities. Are you self-aware? That is part of self-awareness. Look at yourself. What are your weaknesses and what are your strengths? Self-confidence. That exercise where you stand naked in front of your mirror and see your flaws, accept them for what they are. If you don't like your weight, change it. There are things you can't change, like skin color. I mean, you'll be doing harm to yourself. But self-confidence, do you embrace who you are? Are you confident under your own skin? Part of self-awareness. The third attribute is social awareness, so having empathy, meaning you understand the emotions, needs, and concerns of the people around you. You can pick up on emotional cues, and therefore you are comfortable in social settings. You can easily identify group dynamics in a social setting. People grow up when they're told you are a king, you're a queen, you are pampered. Anything you want, you're given. Then you think the world revolves around you. Until you get into a social setting, then you realize, wow, vitu kwa ground is different. You lack emotional intelligence because you have failed to recognize power dynamics in a group. You have failed to pick up on emotional cues from people around you. You can't read people you don't understand because you don't understand yourself in the first place. You don't understand your own emotions, so you can't understand other people's emotions. How do you talk to somebody when they're angry at you? Let me give you a scenario. You go to work and you're talking to your boss and they are mad at you. How do you handle that situation? Do you even recognize that they are mad, the emotion of anger? Do you decide to go head to head with them at that particular moment? Or you wait for them to calm down and then approach it later? The other attribute is relationship management. How do you relate with people around you? Do you know how to form relationships with people around you, different relationships? I'm not talking about dating, no. Do you know how to form different relationships with people around you? Do you know how to form good relationships and maintain them? A key part of this is communication. Can you communicate clearly? Can you inspire? Can you influence others? Teamwork. Are you good at teamwork? Can you work well in a team? If you can't manage conflicts in a team, then you can't work well in a team. There will always be conflicts in a team. That is one thing you need to know. Emotional intelligence is very important if you want to grow because it will affect your performance. Remember, emotional intelligence is about knowing your own emotions and keeping them in control, and also being able to recognize emotions of people around you and then knowing how to use the same emotions and read them and use them so that you're always in good books, and even to manage conflicts, etc. You will find that when you do that, your performance goes up. You are able to achieve a lot of things, make a lot of ground in your growth. Your physical health, If you can manage your emotions, then you can manage your stress. If you can't manage your emotions, then stress will kill you. You need to control your emotions, control your stress. So your physical health improves when you have emotional intelligence. If you don't control your emotions and stress, then mentally, your mental health is something that is going to be really affected. Then once you have your emotions in check, you are a healthy person, then if you can read and appreciate other people's emotions, then you'll know how to control yourself in situations with other people's emotions, and also build strong relationships, and have a healthy social life as well. Remember, we said as an individual you belong in a society, and emotional intelligence plays a big part in how you integrate into the society. So for you to work on your emotional intelligence, you need to start work on your self-management skills, work on your self-awareness, work on your social awareness, and then the way you manage the relationships around you. You build and manage them. Don't forget, your network is your net worth. The second thing we talked about was greed or consumerism, not knowing when enough is enough. Let's talk about food. Let me give this example. If you eat too much of anything is bad for your health. If you eat too much, you become obese, become big, you interfere with people's budgets. Let me give you an example. You've gone visiting a relative and you can't control your eating. You're so greedy. Like, the food they cook in your relative's house, you don't cook in your house, and so you're eating like the world is ending. That is the basis of greed. You need to put that in check. The urge to buy, even things you don't need. I believe in a simplified lifestyle. There are things you don't need. You just want them and you don't need. So a lot of people fall into this trap of greed when they can't differentiate their wants from needs. You have things you need to survive, and there are things you just want. You don't really need them. You just want them. If you can't control your wants, you become a greedy person. You've bought land. Then when you're putting your borders, you take a few steps into your neighbor's land. That is greed. So you find a lot of things stemming up from greed. Things like corruption, greed, or nepotism, where you're in a position of leadership and you only care about your people. You don't care about the qualifications. As long as you employ your people, that is part of greed. There's a lot of malls coming up, and what they are doing is they're building a culture of consumerism. They're turning us into a consumer nation. You don't need all those things you're buying. You're just greedy. The third thing, jealousy. I understand when women become jealous. I find it hard to understand when men become jealous. Jealousy comes in all shapes and sizes, in so many ways. Jealousy will lead you to commit even other sins. You'll go around wasting your time talking badly about other people, judging them. You're just jealous. Stop being jealous. You're wasting time. I said when it comes to love, or for women, I think maybe they are inherently jealous, or their proclivity for jealousy is higher than men. But if you're a man and your propensity for jealousy is high, go kick rocks. I think that is enda sikia vibaya huko. The next sin that we're going to talk about is blind faith. Blind faith is basically believing what people say without really doing a lot of fact checking. You just believe. You're a sheep. You just follow the shepherd. You don't question. Always have this habit of questioning. If you're told jump, at least know why. Why are we jumping? Don't just ask how high. Ask why. Why are we jumping? I like Generation Y. They always ask why. And sometimes you find that when somebody comes with a baseless argument and you ask them why, and they struggle to explain themselves, and there's no point even listening to them. Get into the habit of checking facts. Before you say anything, fact check. Before you just copy what somebody said and follow them blindly. Fact check. If I tell you something, don't just do it. I always say, don't be a sheep, be a goat. I mean, if shepherds are interesting. Back home, I've always seen these people looking after sheep. They just tie one sheep, and then the rest will graze around that one. They will not leave that one behind, because sheep have this group mentality. There's also this thing that if you put sheep in a room, then put some barrier at the door, then try and get them to get out of the room, the first few will jump, and the rest will start jumping as they follow the leaders. Now, if somebody removes the hurdle, the rest are still jumping. There's no hurdle. But because those who went before us jumped, we are also jumping. When it comes to taking care of goats, I dare you, go and try one goat and see if the rest will hang around. They'll go destroying property all over, discovering. I always say, sometimes it's good to be a goat. Don't have blind faith. I've listed ignorance as the fifth sin. The law will always tell you ignorance is not a defense. They always say investigate before you invest. Don't go investing ignorantly. Investigate. You can invest money, you can invest time. Investigate before you invest. If you're venturing into a new business, let's say you want to start a salon, don't just pour your money into starting a salon without doing your investigation first and figuring out how it works. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes before you start a business. You investigate, you figure things out, look at what are the challenges, a lot of things you go through. This works for everything. If I live in an area, in a neighborhood, I need to go around the neighborhood and explore, figure out all the exits from that neighborhood, all the routes that lead to that neighborhood. Figure out how. That is knowledge. You're not ignorant. Figure out the security levels of that neighborhood. You just moved into a new neighborhood. These are things you need to know. Where are the shops? This is basic learning. Sometimes I meet people and I ask them, so let's say you're going to visit a friend in a different neighborhood and you ask them, how do I get to your place? You live in that place, you don't know how to get to it. I remember when I moved to Nairobi, my brother, I have many brothers, big brother. I'm one person who doesn't like discovering new places and unless I need to go somewhere. So I'll go and do my research and figure out things. But he wanted me to know the town, Nairobi town, the city. Like I just wake up and go and get lost because I'd never gotten lost, but I didn't know a lot of places. And I was trying to explain to him, I don't need to know everywhere. I just need to have knowledge of places I go to. This answer, I don't know. A lot of people who give the answer, I don't know, are not curious. You need to have curiosity. Figure things out. Previously, I gave an example of people not being able to do a bit of plumbing in the house, maybe sink your kitchen in Maribika, and now they're calling a fundi instead of buying a pump or just opening pale chini, letting that, whatever it is that is blocking the sink. Ignorance. They always say, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. And squeezy, they've made education really cheap because you can learn anything from the internet. Get into the habit of learning new things. Challenge yourself because ignorance is a sin. You can't know everything, but at least know the things around you. You can't know everything, but get into the habit of researching and figuring things out. Number 6 is inferiority complex. I'm not going to talk much about inferiority complex. I covered a lot. Mostly I covered this when I talked about bleaching and low self-esteem. So it's a sin in my world. I'm going to talk about antisocial behavior, which is the 7th sin. Now, remember, you are an individual, but you belong to a society, and you can't exist without the people around you. You need people to exist. Our existence, our survival on Earth has always depended on the group, the larger group, the society, our society, the society we belong to. We said one of the attributes of emotional intelligence is social awareness. when you lack social awareness, you become antisocial. You start showing antisocial behavior. I know people say we have introverts and extroverts. Yes, I'm not disagreeing with that. But even the introvert knows they cannot live without people around them. So they have to go out of their shells and interact with people. Antisocial behavior comes in when you lack emotional intelligence, when you lack social awareness. You're not aware of things that go on around you socially. I see a lot of people going to church dressed like they're going to the club. Failure to conform to societal norms is an antisocial behavior. It's the same as you have somebody going to the club dressed like they're going to church. There's a place for everything. That is antisocial behavior. One antisocial behavior that I said I don't like is you have people who belong to different religions and then you always want to preach. I know you have nothing else to do, but that is antisocial behavior. Assuming that every person you meet is a Christian is antisocial behavior. I always wonder why this doesn't happen in cities, towns. Because in the villages we have people who get drunk and they start making noise, they start shouting. I wonder why they don't do that in town. I've lived in Nairobi for a long time and I have never once had somebody shouting because they are drunk. How come they shout in the village? That shouting, it's antisocial behavior. So basically, to avoid antisocial behavior, just learn the norms and traditions of whichever society you are in and go with what people do. You have to learn to blend in. Don't be antisocial. Sin number 8 is disorganization. It's okay to do things last minute, but it's not okay to be disorganized and inconvenience people around you, especially at the workplace. It is so hard to deal with people who lack a sense of organization. Like their organization skills are so weak. And the first thing, the best way to be organized is to have a schedule. Teach yourself to schedule. To you budget. If you want to organize your money, budget. If you want to organize your time, schedule. It's so easy to be organized. Then commit to your budget, commit to your schedule. Number 9, idleness and procrastination. They say an idle mind is a devil's workshop because you get into trouble when you're idle. You start doing things that aren't good for you, things that you not normally do when you're busy. You find there's a lot of people who become idle by just procrastination. They have targets, they have deadlines to meet, and they just say, I'll do it later, I do it. All of us are guilty of this, but you need to keep it in check. You need to identify that you have this problem. And I said previously, I think it was episode 1, that you have 24 hours in a day. All of us have 24 hours in a day. 8 hours sleep. If you're sleeping more than 8 hours, then you're idle. 8 hours, socialize, eat, feed, exercise. So much to do, so little time. 8 hours work. Between your sleep, your work, and your socialization, I mean, you can't afford to be idle. Idealism. When we say you're idealistic, so they say it is a metaphysical view that associates, depends on your English teacher, reality to ideas in the mind rather than material objects. Like there's a difference between reality and things you know and the ideas in your mind. That things that don't work in reality, but in your head they're theoretical. So when you put a lot of emphasis on the mental or spiritual components of experiences, and then you renounce the notion of material existence, you're idealistic. This goes back to you being too much into your feelings. Utopianism, I think, is part of an ideology. These people who believe they want to make a perfect world. The world is not a movie. There's a difference between things that happen in a movie and then things that happen in real life. In a movie, you see Spider-Man, this guy who was bitten by a spider, and then he's throwing webs and jumping around. Go get bitten by a spider and see. Let us see whether you'll throw webs. World peace. So Being idealistic is a sin. Don't lose touch with reality. See things as they are, not as you wish them to be. Be pragmatic. The things that work, the things that don't work, the things that are just theory, they will never be practical. We always have ideal situations. In research, we have the ideal situation and then the situation on the ground. You're taught this when you're looking for your problem, when you're doing your problem statement, you look at the ideal situation, and then when everything is perfect, all conditions are perfect, and then you look at the situation on the ground, and then the gap is what you research on. So being idealistic is meaning you're losing touch with reality. It is a sin to lose touch with reality. That's my take on that. Addiction. Addiction. This is what I say about addiction. Everything is good for you and everything is bad for you. You can be addicted to a lot of things. Some people are addicted to food, some people are addicted to women, some people are addicted to drugs, some people are addicted to making money. If you can't control your urges, you become an addict. There are things that if you're addicted to, you look successful. But there are things that if you're addicted to, it's not good for you. Like now, drugs and alcohol. I always tell people that if you do a drug and you lose control of your faculties, don't do it. It's not for you. Nasikia people say pombe si sukuma wiki, pombe si ugali. It's not for everybody. There are people who function with drugs in their system. They function well, and there are people who can't. Everything is done in moderation. I would rather you get addicted to something positive than something negative, though addiction in itself is not a good thing. Should always do everything in moderation. Don't fall into the trap of addiction. It is not easy to get out of an addiction, especially the negative ones, because it takes so you cannot get rid of a habit. Remember, we said as humans we are creatures of habit. We cannot get rid of your habit. You can just replace the habit, but not so many people are willing. Even when it's life threatening, some people can't seem to get rid of their addictions. So learn to identify. If you're falling into the trap of an addiction, learn to identify it as early as possible and find help. Get help. If you need to see a shrink, go see a shrink. Or the best thing to do is just replace it with something else. Do something else. If you feel like you want to have a drink, go for jogging. Do something else. Get into the habit of doing something else. Or go pray if you're a man of faith. I've put death as number 12 in the list of 13 sins. There's good debt and there's bad debt. So simply put, I just put debt as a sin. I'm talking about the bad kind of debt. You know, in life, in business, you talk about assets and liabilities. If you take a loan is a debt that earns interest. To go and procure an asset, that's good debt. But if you take a loan to go and procure a liability, like you go take a loan to buy a car that is not meant for business, just for leisure, that's a bad debt. That aside, there are people who are used to borrowing money. They are always in debt, in somebody's debt, and they have a lot of phone numbers. I once called my friend and he had lost my number and he wasn't picking. So I was wondering, why is this guy not picking my phone? So I sent him a text. Hey, this is so and so. It's been a while. I know we haven't spoken. And then he saw my name and called me back. So I asked him, why were you not picking my calls? He said, niko na deni ya watu. Kuna watu wamekuwa wakinitafuta, niko na deni yao na sijawarudishia. And I'm trying to figure out how to pay them back. You can imagine. So I was just telling myself, debt is not a very good thing to be in. Debt is a sin, actually. And a lot of debts that you see people having stems from greed. Remember sin number 2, greed. When you want what you can't afford, you're not realistic. Sometimes it comes from jealousy. You've seen somebody with a car and you're also jealous. So you go borrowing money just to show that you can also buy a car. I mean, people have... We are not in competition with each other. We are in competition with time. The sooner you realize that, the happier you'll be. You're not competing with the guy seated next to you. You're competing with how much time you have, how much you can get done in 24 hours. That's what we are competing with. So it's pointless to go into debt just to please others, just to compete with people who might not even be competing with you because they have their own priorities and goals. The rule of threes, I was saying it takes 3 decades for a man to figure out his direction. And a lot of people who get into this habit of debt started in their 20s. A lot of them started in their 20s. You want what you can't afford, so you end up borrowing and borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. You borrow to pay a debt, you borrow to pay another debt. I've seen colleagues and friends who earn way more than me, but they're in debt because they are greedy. They want more than they can't have. They can't just control themselves. Debt is a sin. It is way too expensive to take a loan and build a house. If you can't pay back the loan, then the bank can't even have your house. Loans or borrowing for an asset is okay because the asset will pay back the money. But borrowing or being in debt for a liability, that's bad. You're going to be living a life of stress because you'll be living beyond your means. And finally, the last sin on the list is poverty. Personally, I believe poverty is a sin. There are people who I have different types of poverty. Remember initially we said you have elements of you as a human being. You have your spiritual side, your physical side, physical or material side. Then you have your mental side. So you can have spiritual poverty, you can have mental poverty, and you can have physical poverty or material poverty. So you can be financially poor, that is a sin. Okay. You can be spiritually poor, that's a sin. You can be mentally poor, that's also a sin. Poverty of any form is a sin. Why? Because a lot of poverty comes from laziness, whether it is financial, spiritual, or even mental poverty. Mental poverty is when you are ignorant of things around you. That is mental poverty. You're starving your brain. You don't want to figure things out. Mental poverty. You don't want to think. Mental poverty. Spiritual poverty is when you don't have that tie with your creator. You don't have that relation with yourself, your environment, your creator. You're just there. You wake up, you eat, you sleep. You wake up, you eat, you poop, you sleep. Eat, poop, sleep. You just like a vegetable. Even vegetables are useful. You don't apply yourself spiritually. You don't grow spiritually. You don't develop spiritually. It's poverty. And some people thrive in poverty, by the way. Some people like being poor. They don't want to do anything about it. The reason I'm saying poverty is a sin, any form of poverty is a sin, is because you can get out of poverty if you really want to. You'll be telling me, oh, some people are disadvantaged, no matter the hurdles. If you really want to, you can get out of poverty. You can remove the chains from your hands, your feet, your neck, and just get out of poverty. Don't be happy in poverty. Don't gallivant in poverty. And it's a mentality. You have people who are not realistic. They want to party all the time. You will be poor. You're always looking at where's the next party. They don't want to work. Some people just want to do too much sleep. Too much of anything is bad. There's always actions and consequences to your actions. Equal rights, equal lefts. So poverty is a sin. Stop sinning. Don't be a sinner. Get out of poverty. You can actually literally drag yourself out of poverty, no matter what your situation is. I believe Once you stop feeling sorry for yourself and wanting others to feel sorry for you, you can actually pull yourself out of the hole you dug yourself into, or the hole that somebody else dug you into. Some people are not poor because of their decisions. Some people are poor because of decisions that their guardians or parents made for them. I accept and acknowledge that, but feeling sorry for yourself is not going to help. Get yourself out of that situation. Poverty is a sin.